Yeah, and once again, it's just kind of learning how to do it and trying it.
Where do you buy those pickles?
What's that?
Where do you buy those pickles?
Ooh, those are from my garden.
They're the best pickles you will ever have. Her pickles.
One of the things you just mentioned was real true, because if you do think about, I mean, if things turn things turned bad and it was a different situation than what we're in right now, it's going to be very cumbersome to feed a 400-pound pig, what it needs to eat, unless you've got acres and acres of fresh, vegetation and stuff for it to live off. A cow, I mean, unless you've got acres of hay you're able to grow, it's going to be very difficult to have a cow thrive. A bunny eats very little. A chicken can get by off. If you look at the way people did it in the turn of the century, they would have a certain number of chickens, and usually no more than 10 or 12 at certain times of the year, and then they would just work accordingly, because you don't have the convenience. If you're thinking about how convenient it is to go to a feed store and buy a bag of food for your chicken, that's not necessarily self-sufficient. You're learning how to become self-reliant. You're learning how to use and do these wonderful things. But we've got to be mindful, if you're feeding 3 pigs and they're going through 1,000 pounds of grain a month, if things got disrupted, that's probably going to be very improbable to sustain. So little animals, no one's going to know you got them. They're going to be easy to maintain. You're going to have a rabbit that you process and eat that day versus 300 pounds of meat that you're going to have to figure out how to cure and store for a winter. So it's a lot easier to do some of the smaller things. And it's really easy if you just don't have space and the luxury of acreage and stuff to do rabbits.
Like what you're talking about as well, I don't know how many people live in a tract home or whatever. Most people don't live in farms around here, at least. Well, that's not true. More so than in LA.
Yeah.
But like what you're talking about with the smaller animals, rabbits and chickens and things like that, you'd be amazed in a tract home the amount of food you can grow. We grow massive amounts of food on our property. And, if what you're talking about, you had issues with supply chains of food and, feeding bigger animals. If you're growing your food too, you have the ability to feed those smaller animals, no problem with your garden.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very simple.
It's so true. Let's just...
Garden?
That's a perfect segue into what we were going to just start talking about. Yeah.
I just have a quick question. I don't know if I can make sense out of it. But okay, so say the original doe and buck, they had the 10 babies. At what point, do you eat them before you then have to separate them, boys from girls? Or
If you would want to keep all 10 for yourself and you didn't want to sell any, the babies would, or however many she has, 8, 12, somewhere in there, the babies would stay with the mama, and you'd separate them from the daddy. Almost a lot of these animals you do separate from the daddy, like pigs and stuff. But the bunnies you would separate from the buck, and you'd keep them with the mama till they're weaned off, which is somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks. Once they're weaned off, you'd separate them from the mama, because the mama's not going to want them around once they're weaned off of her and she's kind of done nursing them.
Do you have to separate the boys from the girls?
No. Well, there's about a month and a half there where they're still small enough and they're still playful. All, whether it's 8, 10, 12, can be together in one cage.
We never did separate them.
No, but we
before
didn't.
we ate them.
Because at about the point that you're going to want to process them, they're going to be less than 5 months old. So they won't quite, for us, because they were about 4 or 5 pounds at this point. Yeah, and you didn't need to have 10 separate cages for them and stuff. Because if you were going to have them in there longer than, say, 7 or 8 months, probably even, you're going to start seeing. And that's kind of the beauty of it, is you have a little bit of luxury with time as you learn these things, but as you experience it firsthand, you'll start seeing some bickering. You'll start seeing some ruckus going on. And either they need to be separated or they need to go.
But they won't be reproducing yet.
No, they'll start reproducing in about 6 months. Rabbits,
So you plan to eat that whole
No, that's
litter.
the cool thing about this, is if you do have chickens or rabbits, we sell our eggs that we get from the chickens. Or we've incubated chickens or baby chicks, and you could sell those. So you can use it for your own benefit. You can put up meat rabbits for sale and just sell them for whatever it's going for.
And so you want to say, maybe I want to take 4 of them and process them and get them all done and have them in the freezer for the next couple months, and then I'm going to sell the other ones, and I'm going to pay for, we don't make any money. We spend a lot more than what we bring in on our situation. But if you gear yourself towards one thing, like bunnies, it's a lot easier to become streamlined and maximize what you spend and what you make back. So you could easily take bunnies and say out of each litter, cut it in half and say, half of these are going for us. We're going to put them in the freezer and they'll last probably a month or 2 or 3 till we eat them all. And the other half we're going to sell for, you could sell meat rabbits. You look online on Craigslist, meat rabbits are anywhere from 20 to 40 bucks a piece. So you can say, I'm going to sell these 6, and I'm going to keep these 6, and then in 6 weeks I'm going to breed her again, and I'm going to start all over, and I'm going to stagger. And you can literally just come up with your own little formula about how often you want to breed, and how often you want to go through the meat, and find out what works for you. Yeah.
After the babies are weaned off, how long do you have to wait before you breed her again?
It said.
Isn't it something small, like seriously 2 weeks or something?
After they're weaned, it's less than a month. She can be bred again.
Okay. And so if you put her in there and she's not ready to be bred, she won't let him.
Yeah.
So
if
then
she's
you'll
not,
know.
she'll hunker down and he'll do everything he can, but it's not gonna work. And she'll just hunker down. And then if she's ready, it's been enough time, she'll just sprawl out and
Kind of like you again.
there's children here.
What? They were already thinking. But yeah, you'll know.
You can also feed them, like we have 2 bins. Well, first of all, with chickens, you can give chickens any of your leftovers. Spaghetti, anything. I'm telling you, they'll even eat chicken. They'll eat anything. And so we don't ever, when you scrape your plate, your children's plates, it goes into a bucket of some sort. So now we have pigs, so we have our pig bucket. But then for our rabbits, any produce that's cut, the ends of celery that you're not eating or whatever it is, goes in the rabbit bucket. So again, a cheap way where you're going to be able to feed them what, just a lot of time. I mean, you have to still give them their feed, but it's so great that you'll be amazed at how much you normally throw away.
We were blown away by how less our trash was from the city.
And he says that.
I mean, it's phenomenal how much went out in the trash or down the garbage disposal that now goes in a bucket for the pigs or a bucket for the chickens or whatever. And it's just, it feels, it seems like it's better, it seems like for us.
Yeah, that's good.
Any questions about rabbits?
I have a question because I don't know that much about rabbits. How do you do in the rabbit? Do you hit it over the head? Knock it out? Or what? I mean, what do you do?
Okay, if it's a wild rabbit, chances are you're probably going to need to shoot it, okay, with the pellet gun or 22. A rule of thumb for wild rabbits, for those of you who on your property you see cottontails and you're able to get to them without your neighbors calling the cops because you're running around with a gun or whatever, winter months are the only months you want to do that. Okay, if it gets below frost, like if the night dips down to a frost level, that kills an internal parasite and worm that's in wild natural rabbits. Once that stops, there's a rule of thumb that says if there's an R in the month, it's safe to eat a rabbit. So like, theoretically September through, April. But we don't live necessarily in the cooler climate area, so we might need to narrow that down to, December, January, February or something like that. Where we're up in Anza, we get a few more months out of it. Now if you raise rabbits, the way we do it, and the way we've done turkeys and stuff like that, we have a little branch that we've got area. This is like the area for the the go down, and we have a little loop where we put the the rabbits. Most things when they're upside down do tend to relax a little bit. With rabbits, we put their, I put kind of their feet in a little thing, and I just slice right there, and it cuts off blood circulation to their brain, oxygen. There's no pain, because what feeds that pain in nerves and central nervous system is oxygen and blood flow. So if you cut those, same with any other, it severs that connection there. So it's
do the same thing with chickens.
It'll have its reaction, but there's just a quick, slice, and that's one way to do it. You can lay it down and just chop its head off. You can shoot it there's I guess it's feel what you feel more comfortable. For me, I feel like when I get that animal down and I slice it, it's bleeding out, and it's very fast. And you also want that blood to drain out. As that heart's pumping, it's pumping all that blood out so that there's not, blood trapped in that animal.
Well, it's interesting what you said too, how when you turn them upside down, they kind of become still.
Well, like, if you take a turkey or a chicken and you hold them upside down, I mean, they're flat for a second, they'll be like, whatever. And they just hang out.
My grandfather would hold them up like that and literally what we call give them a rabbit chop to the neck.
We'd chop their head off, or
We'd break their neck.
oh, okay.
And then you cut.
Yeah.
I've done that where you can break the neck, and that's just, that'll, and then with a lot of those you do want to cut the main arteries there quick so that they can bleed out while the heart's still pumping, because you do want to get all that blood out.
Does it squirt everywhere, or is it?
For rabbits, it just drips. I mean, just if it's upside down, it'll just drain. And in fact, if you want, you can keep with that slice and just keep the tip of the knife down, and it'll just run down the blade, and it won't get on the rabbit's head or anything like that.
And then just have a hose and wash it down.